Hi, I'm Scott Womble, and this is your 2-minute tip on biblical interpretation. Last week I talked about the Pharisees, so I thought this week I would talk about the Scribes. The Scribes are mentioned about 58 times in the New Testament, and about 20 times the Scribes and Pharisees are mentioned together. We can trace the Scribes all the way back to the time of Ezra at about 538 BC, and the Scribes were the folks who protected and preserved the law. But sometime around the 2nd century, they also began interpreting the law. And that's why some believe that it's possible that the Pharisees actually arose as a sect from the Scribes, not the Hasidim that I mentioned last week. The Scribes were called men of the synagogue, and they dealt with theological matters, not the ritual aspects that the Pharisees did. They also were not a religious party like the Pharisees. They were a professional group, sometimes called lawyers or copyists or jurists. Mark portrays the Scribes as the primary opponents of Jesus. And it's really interesting to see how the Scribes are hung up on Jesus' authority. In chapter 1, we read that the crowds recognize that Jesus speaks with authority, unlike the Scribes. In chapter 2, Jesus heals some people, and they start crying blasphemy. In other words, he doesn't have authority to do these things. And in chapter 3, it just gets worse because they claim that Jesus is casting out demons by the authority or by the power of Satan. And in chapter 11, they just ask the question, by whose authority are you doing these things? Of course, the Scribes want to flex their muscles and show Jesus who has the real authority. In Mark 11, we read about how the crowds are astonished at the teachings of Jesus, but the Scribes are just standing there thinking about how they can kill him. And in the very next chapter, Jesus says, beware of the Scribes. They love to be looked at. They love to be praised. They love to have the authority. It reminds me of some of the things I've said in some of the previous videos. God wants a person with humility, and he can really work with someone who has a soft heart towards him. Well, I hope this video has been a blessing to you, and if it has been, do me a favor, hit that like button and subscribe to my channel. God bless, and go shine the light for Jesus.